The first thing we're going to discuss is building an inpatient insulin regimen for Mr. Brimley. I'd recommend taking out a piece of paper at this time as we're going to do some brief calculations. So let's talk about how we build these insulin dosing recommendations. The first thing we're going to do is determine the patient's weight in kilograms. Then we're going to determine the patient's category based on an insulin sensitivity table that I'll show you in a few slides. We're going to multiply the factor that we find in the table by the patient's total weight in kilograms. Finally, we're going to take that value, also called the total daily insulin dose, and divide 50% into basal or long-acting insulin and 50% into mealtime, which we will again divide into the 3 meals of the day. So let's start out. So Mr. Brimley weighs 100 kilograms and his height is 5'2", making his BMI 40. So we know that his weight is 100 kilograms. Now we need to determine his insulin dosing patient category. So as you can see through this table, the rates at which people receive the total daily insulin dose vary, both depending on the type of diabetes they have, their age, whether or not they were previously taking insulin, or what their BMI is. In our case, our patient is an insulin-using type 2 diabetic, and as such, his total daily insulin requirements should be between 0.5 and 0.6 units per kilogram. So far we have the patient's weight, we have the multiplier that we're going to use, so now let's do some math. So we know that he weighs 100 kilograms. We're going to use somewhere between 0.5 and 0.6 units per kilogram to determine his total daily insulin dose. For the sake of ease of math, we're going to use 0.6. So we take 100, we multiply by 0.6 units per kilogram, and we end up with 60 units of total insulin needed per day. We will then take that 60 units and divide half into long-acting insulin, so 30 units of glargine, QHS, or every evening. We'll then take the other half and divide it into 30 units of short-acting insulin, or Lispro, TID, 3 times a day with meals. And if we're going to divide 30 by 3 into 3 meals, that would be 10 units at breakfast, 10 units at lunch, and 10 units at dinner. Take a second and make sure that this math makes sense. I know it's simple, but if you have patients who are coming in without an insulin regimen, this can be extremely helpful for creating a basal bolus and not just using sliding scale. So right now, we know that the patient has 30 units of glargine or long-acting and 10 units of Lispro or short-acting 3 times a day with meals. So let's now talk about whether or not we need a sliding scale. So again, from this chart, you can see that the total insulin requirements determine at what degree of sliding scale you need per patient. Our patient is on 60 units of total daily insulin. As such, he should be on a mid-dose sliding scale. So now let's look at how this has changed. The patient originally came in only on home glargine 25 units every evening. We're now going to put him on 30 units of glargine every evening, as well as Lispro, 10 units with meals, and a mid-dose sliding scale. Now, while this seems like a significant increase in the amount of his insulin, we have to remember that his A1C was elevated on arrival, and the fact that as the patient is in the hospital, we can easily adjust this regimen. Thank you for paying attention. Please click complete when you feel comfortable with this recording.